So today we're going to do the handover video on this Rollerteam T-line 590. We're going to start on the outside and then we're going to move on to the inside. So firstly, coming over to the passenger side, you'll notice you've got your fill-up point for your diesel, which is just into there. And if I open up the passenger door, you can see that you've got access, obviously, into the cabin. On this side, you'll notice you've got your bonnet release catch, which I'll just pull for you now. I'll show you underneath the bonnet in just a minute. But you will also notice you have got these Remis cab blinds. You've got these fitted to the entire cab area, and to operate them, all you need to do is simply pinch like so the tab. That will release, and then if you lead from the bottom, you can then just connect them up via the magnetic strip to black out the entire cab. When you're taking them in, simply pull and lead from the bottom again and let that slide into place. The reason I tell you to lead from the bottom is they can get caught at the bottom, so if you lead from that point, you risk them, there's no risk of them twisting or getting caught. And as I say, if you do that for all your blinds, you are good to go. As a rule of thumb with anything in a motorhome, if it feels like it is being forced, you're probably doing something wrong, so just bear that in mind. You want to make sure that obviously you are careful with everything in the van. Underneath the bonnet, there's not many things that you need to know. The main things that you need to know is if you're ever jump starting the vehicle. The bonnet release catch is just in line with the badge, just underneath here. I'll just pause the video now and lift that bonnet up for you now. And as you can see, with the bonnet open, you've got your access point to your negative terminal, and your positive terminal is just underneath this cap. It says there's a positive sign onto there. It's a little bit difficult to see on the video, but just all you need to do is flick this cap up and your positive connects onto that point. So negative there, positive there, and that's if you jump starting the van. They're the main things that you need to know, but just to point out a couple more, you've got your engine oil here along with your dipstick below that. Your brake disc fluid is up at the top. You've then got your engine coolant, your power steering fluid, and then finally in the corner there you've got your washer fluid, as you can see. Now this vehicle, I will say, hasn't had a valet yet. I'm just trying to get this video out to you before your handover. So do please look past any dirt that's on the vehicle. It will obviously all be spick and span for when you collect. Moving over onto the side of the vehicle, you'll notice that you've got a vent here that says Truma. This is your chimney, in essence. It's your vent for your boiler when that's operating. So don't hang anything on there, it can get quite hot. And directly below that, you may notice you've got a little black lever here. Now this operates your drain down point for the wastewater tank. All you need to do is pull that towards you, and that will dump out the wastewater tank. Now there's three main drain down points in the vehicle. You've got the wastewater, the fresh water, which is located on the inside, and then you've got your boiler drain down point. What I recommend is, especially this time of year when it's getting colder, to always keep everything drained down in the van when not in use, as you don't want anything freezing. And obviously when you're using the van, get it all filled up with water. Now when you're on site, you'll have a big grid that you can drive over. Once you're over that grid, simply pull that lever and that will dump out all of your water into the grid, and that goes for your wastewater, your fresh and your boiler. And what I recommend is, when you are travelling home ready to put the vehicle into storage, leave all your drain down points open, because the vibrations of the road will finally get that last residual bits of water out of the tanks. Now, as I mentioned, there's two other drain down points which I'll get onto shortly. They're located on the inside of the vehicle, and we'll move on to them shortly. The one thing I would advise, however, with the wastewater is, especially again this time of year, I'd leave that tank open and put a bucket underneath so it just drains out the water, so nothing's sat in that tank. That's the only tank that is external to the vehicle and does risk run the risk of it actually freezing when you're using the van. The other two tanks you're fine, because they are on the inside of the van, so when in use you don't need to obviously keep them drained down, but this particular one you do. Moving on, you've then got your fill up point for your fresh water tank. As you can see, you just need to remove the cap, and then using a food grade hose pipe, you can put the hose pipe into there and fill up the tank. When it's overflowing, obviously you filled up your tank, and then you can move to your pitch. I don't personally recommend drinking out of the fresh water tank. You're fine obviously if you're boiling water, but I typically say if you're drinking water, drink your bottled water. Next up, You've got your hookup point, as you can see, for your 230 volt electric. So when you're on site, you can hook up to your electric mains point and obviously gain 230 volts in the vehicle. Moving round to the back, you can see this vehicle's got a bike rack on, which is here. It's got 4 rails there, obviously ready for your bikes. Up at the top, you've also got your reversing camera, and then down below, you'll notice you've got another locker, which will open up for you now. So, located in this locker is your cassette toilet. Before removing the toilet, you need to firstly ensure that the blade on the toilet is closed, and I'll show you how to do that, or where that is done from when we're on the inside of the vehicle. Once that's closed, all you need to do is lift up on the blue tab, just like so, and slide that out, just like so, for when you're emptying it. Once you've done that, and you're ready to empty, all you need to do is swivel out the little funnel at the top, remove the blue cap, and clicking the blue button on the back, that will release an internal vacuum which will allow all the contents to flow out easily. Once you've done that, if you've got any blue fluid, obviously that can go into that cap itself. There's a little measurement on there that you can pop that into, but before doing that, I'd probably just put a bit of water in there just to swill it out. And once you've done that, stick the cap back on. That can then swivel back into its position, and you're ready to put the cassette back into its slot. Just before I do that, one thing to mention, you will notice there is this blue blade that I've not spoken about yet. This, of course, turns, and this is what opens and closes the cassette, and it is in essence what makes contact with the blade. That should always stay in this position. That should never need to move. If that is off slightly, it will not allow the cassette to go back in. And again, like I've mentioned, as a rule of thumb, if something feels like it's being forced, this being one of them, you may have potentially left the blade open, or this may not be at the correct angle. So please ensure that that is always at that angle there. Once you've done that, pick up the cassette, line it up, and that can slide in until the blue toggle or clip slots into place. On the back of the vehicle now, or moving round rather, you can see you've got your garage, so you've got a nice bit of storage in here. You've got your awning pole, which is located in here, as well as some infill cushions for if you're making up the lower bed. You've also got the vehicle's documents and manuals, along with additional bike rack arms should you need them. You can as well divide this space by popping these down. All you need to do to lock these is simply turn these to the position, and then using your key you can then lock them in. Moving on, you'll then notice you've got your fridge vents, which are on this side. If it is a hot day, try and keep this area under some shade. It'll just help the fridge run a little bit more efficiently. And one thing to mention, you can buy winter covers to stick underneath these fridge vents should you need to. Up at the top, you can see you've got your Fiamma awning, and there's a little hook on there which you can hook the awning pole onto to then wind out the awning. Now if you like, I can show you this on collection. I'll show you how that operates, but one thing to know with the awning is not to use it in windy conditions. If it is windy, stick the awning back in. It's not worth using, because as you can appreciate, it's like having a big sail on the side of the van, so if there's any bit of wind, it could potentially rip the awning, damaging your van and also damaging other vehicles nearby. So just bear that in mind. Your legs are already in the awning, and they simply fold out and drop down, and then you can walk it out. Moving on, notice in here, this is where your gas locker is. You've got space for 2 gas bottles, and if you bring them on the day, we can hook them up for you. You've got your gas regulator here, and then you've got your pigtail, which you can then connect your gas bottles to. Please ensure that when you're travelling, these gas bottles are turned off at all times, and then when you're stationary on site, you can of course turn them on to allow the gas to feed through. Now that concludes the outside of the van. We're going to move on to the inside now. Okie dokie, so we're now on the inside of the vehicle. As you walk through the habitation door, you'll notice up at the top, you've got your control panel. This is the main control panel, as you can see. To turn that on, this is touch sensitive, just select that button, and that is your main master switch. On the other side, you've got your temperature on the inside, which you can flick between. Up from that, you've then got your light button, so that indicates that your lights will turn on. Now you can obviously turn these lights on and off individually by the switches, but that's your main master switch. You've then got up at the top a little light button there, another one which shows on the side of the vehicle, and that's just for your little door light, and then you've got your pump button there. I'll get onto this and why this is flashing in a minute, but your pump button is just located here. So when you're on site, obviously only run the pump when you've got full water capacity, because you don't want to burn that pump out. But once you're on site and you're filled up with water, you can click your pump, and then if you go to your taps, including your shower, turn them on and then turn them to hot. What that will do is it'll pull fresh water from the fresh water tank into the boiler and then out of the tap. It'll spurt and splutter, and then when it's running steadily, you've primed your system for your hot water. And as I say, you need to do this on all your taps. Once you've done that, flick it over to cold and do the exact same. When it's running steadily, you've primed your system. Now once you've done that, you don't need to turn the pump off, providing you've got water in the van, which you will have at this point. Because each of the taps have a micro switch which will activate and deactivate the pump whenever you turn the tap on. The main thing is obviously priming that system. Now what I recommend is, if this is the first thing you do when you're on site, pulling the water through, especially in the hot, you can then go to your heating, turn your heating for your water on, and that will start heating that water up. It'll take about 30 to 40 minutes depending on what you're running it off. But if that's the first thing you can do when you're on site, by the time you're all ready and prepped with your van, your water should be up to temperature. Coming back over to the control panel, on the other side you've got your fresh water, and then also your wastewater. Now at the moment you can see that that's flashing because it's saying that for your wastewater we're at 100%. You know that because it says R1 in red. That stands for your wastewater. The fresh water S1, so that's your first tank, is at 66%, so we've got a bit of water in there. If you click it again, it shows you your wastewater. And as I say, it's at maximum capacity at the moment, hence why it is just flashing. Underneath that, you've then got your vehicle or habitation battery voltage, as well as the percentage. And then underneath that, you've got your vehicle battery voltage and percentage as well. And as I say, straight below that, you've then got your main master to turn on and off everything on the vehicle. On the other side of this, you'll notice you've got your Truma control panel. So your Truma heating system operates your heating for the vehicle itself and also the vehicle's water temperature. So to turn this on, just click. Now everything below the line is what you want to select, and just by using this dial you can flick through the options. When it's flashing, that's in essence you hovering over the option. Click in to select. Firstly, you've got your vehicle's temperature. You can select that onto 30 degrees should you want to. You've then got your water temperature. You can run that off Eco, Hot or Boost. Eco is approximately 40 degrees and Hot is approximately 70 degrees. So depending on, say when you get on site first, stick it on hot, it'll get it up to temperature the quickest. Now what Boost will do is it'll concentrate on heating the water instead of the vehicle itself, and it'll start heating that up. And instead of, as I say, heating the vehicle, it'll just focus on purely heating the water. Next up, you've then got this little cylinder with a little icon here, a little lightning icon. This stands for your fuel. So this is what you want to run the heating system off. So you can either run it off gas, Mix 1, which is a mixture of gas and 1 kilowatt electric, Mix 2, which is a mixture of gas and 2 kilowatt electric, EL1, which is purely 1 kilowatt electric, or EL2, which is 2 kilowatt electric. Now, in terms of what I advise when using selecting a fuel, when you're on site, the majority of the time you'll run it off EL2. When it's this time of year, when it is colder, I recommend using gas. It'll get it up to temperature the quickest, and then you can flick it over to EL2, or a mixture if you wanted to, just to really maintain that temperature. But obviously when it is a little bit warmer, EL2 will be absolutely fine. The only time you'll have to run it off EL1 is if, for example, you're on a site that's not giving you enough power. If that is the case, I recommend just sticking it on Mix 1 on, or just gas only, just because a vehicle of this size, it will struggle heating the vehicle just off, obviously, a 1 kilowatt electric feed. So that's your fuel. Next up, you've then got your fan option. Now at the moment, because I've not got anything selected, it's just saying vent, so that will recirculate the air in the vehicle. When you have got a fuel selected and you've got the system running, you can run it off. You've got the option of Eco, High or Boost. So Eco will obviously turn your fan on. High is a more intense fan, and then Boost will basically do the exact same as Boost for the water, but work obviously vice versa. So instead of heating the water, it will heat or focus on heating the vehicle itself. Coming back up, you've then got a timer button here, so you can set a timer for when you want the heating to come on. You've then got your time, so you can change the time on there. And then finally, the more important bit is your settings. There's a few things in here on the settings, but the main thing that you need to know is reset, if you ever need to reset the system. Now, the reason why you'll need to reset the system is if you ever get an error code. Now, the times you'll get an error code tends to be if you have, for example, selected a fuel that you haven't got. So say, for example, I tried to run the heating off gas. I've no gas in the vehicle, so I'll get an error code because it's trying to it's trying to heat the vehicle with something that it hasn't got. So to protect itself, it will give you an error code. If that happens, you need to go into the settings, click reset, and that will reset it. It'll flash and flicker and say initializing on the screen for about 20 minutes. For about 20 seconds rather. But once it's done that, it'll load back on and it'll look perfect. But you do need to wait a full 20 minutes after that has been done, just to allow the system to completely reset itself. But once you've done that, you're good to go. Also, please bear in mind, before you, say for example, you've got this running off electric, before you unplug from electric, turn this system off, because again, if you take that electric out and it's running off electric without turning it off, it will go into an error mode again. So just bear that in mind. On the other side, you've got a socket up here, along with a 12-volt point for a telly, should you need it. And there's some light switches just as you walk in as well. Moving over to the other side, we'll go into your lounge shortly, but this is your kitchen. We've discussed obviously about heating and priming the water. In here you've got a nice bit of storage, and underneath here you've got your oven, along with your hobs which are at the top. Nice bit of storage as well, with your grill pan just located up at the top there. And then on the other side, you've got a bit more storage here. Now you'll notice there's a little box up at the top there. This is for your solar panel. You've got a solar panel located on the vehicle, located on the roof, and this is in essence the controller for it. This is the regulator. So this regulates the amount of power going into the solar panel. Now you need to leave this as it is. You know, you don't need to do anything with it. You can leave that as it is. So you're absolutely good to go. A lot of people think they have to turn it on or off. It's always on when your control panel's on, so there's no need to obviously regulate that. It will do it all for you. Obviously be realistic, this time of year it's not going to be pulling much, but in the summer, providing it's a clear area, it will pull a decent amount. Below that is your fridge and your freezer. So you got your freezer up at the top here, and your fridge is just below. Now this is a three-way system, so if I hold this, there's 3 ways to in essence power it. So using this square here, you can select through the options like so, should you want to. You've then got the temperature that you can change, and you've then got the option of whether you want it to recirculate the air. So I'm just going to turn this off for the time being because I know I've not got any fuel to power the fridge. But the reason they call it a 3-way fridge is there's 3 ways to power it. You've got the option of running it off gas. So when you're wild camping, you can run it off gas. You've got the option of running it off the 12-volt leisure battery for when you're travelling. And then also when you're on site and you're hooked up, you've got the option of running it off the hookup point. Now a lot of people think that they can run the fridge when it off the 12-volt leisure battery when they are wild camping and just stationary. This isn't the case. It would simply drain all of the battery of its power. So with that in mind, you need to always just always power this system on your 12-volt for only when you're driving, and then when you're stationary and you're wild camping, run it off your gas. The reason why you can run the fridge off your 12 volt when you're travelling is this vehicle's got a built-in alternator, which will in essence send power and charge to your leisure battery, which will ultimately power the fridge. But obviously when you're stationary, that won't work, so just bear that in mind. Just a couple of things as well. This has got an A button, which stands for auto, which is brilliant. So that will automatically assign whichever fuel you've got. If you've not got anything like I haven't at the moment, it'll just select gas as the option. But as I say, it's once you've got something, it will automatically assign. So just leave it on that. For your fridge, I recommend putting cold things in because it does a good job at maintaining the temperature. And for your freezer, put frozen things in there. It will just help maintain the temperature of it. Now coming back into your lounge, I'll do your bathroom last of all. But you can see that you've got your drop-down bed, which is up at the top here. Click this button, and that will, of course, drop the bed, just like so. I'll just drop it to the top there. You can see that you've got some netting underneath your bed here. Now with your bed, you can leave all your bedding on there. Just with your pillows, I recommend sticking them at the front, but everything else is good to go. Once you're ready to put it up, just obviously make sure the area is clear, and then you can take the bed up like so. Now in terms of an override for the bed, should anything go wrong, you have got an access point into it here, just through this hole, so that bed winder can connect into there, and you can wind it up, on and down, should you ever need to. The most that tends to happen with these beds in terms of bits that goes wrong, however, tends to be the fuses. A fuse tends to blow, so what I recommend is taking some spare fuses with you. The general fuses, you know, they're not motorhome specific, so don't worry about that. So then if you do ever blow a fuse, you've got another one to replace it with, instead of having to wind the bed up and down. A nice little touch as well, you've got these little lights here underneath the bed, should you ever need them. Now in your lounge, you can see you've got a really good size lounge here, with a little bit of storage just there. Now underneath this bench seat is where your leisure battery and also your RCD breaker is located, which I'll show you now. And as you can see, with just this removed, you've got your Varta battery there and your RCD breaker with your fuses on, which is just located there, as you can see. So if the vehicle ever trips, just come to this point. It's not a problem. You can just change the fuse. You've also got a socket there for 230 volt as well. Obviously anything 230 volt will only work when you are plugged into mains electric, just bear that in mind. So moving on to the other side, you can see I've just taken the cushions off just to show you for accessibility. Here underneath your main seat you've got your freshwater tank. Now we've spoken about obviously draining down for your wastewater, but your freshwater, as I say, is located on the inside. To drain this down, just remove the red cap like so, and then you'll notice on the inside of the tank, can you see that? That is a little water bung. All you need to do to drain that is simply flick it up and pull it out. You've got two in there, and that will just allow you to drain down the entire tank for when you're on site. And as I say, when you're travelling, you can leave that open. Whenever it's you're not using it, just drain it down. Even in the summer, I often recommend draining it down just to get into the habit of having them drain down come the winter. If you want as well, you can put purifying tablets in here and clean it out, but because you're not drinking from the tank, it's not so much as an issue. Moving on, onto this side, you'll notice there's a little compartment here. This is just where your pump is housed. And then above that, you've got a little hatch which just removes, and this gains you access to your boiler. Now you're going to have to bear with me here because it's quite difficult to see underneath here, so I don't know how I'm going to get on with filming this. So if you want me to show you in person, that is not a problem. Located in here, you have got a little boiler drain down point, and this is your final drain down point in the vehicle. What is fitted to this is something called a frost protection valve. It's a black compartment, or black piece of plastic in essence, with a diamond on the top, with a tab on the side of the the black plastic. To drain it down, you need to turn the diamond, and what that will do is it will flick a little blue tab out at the side, and that will drain down the boiler tank. As I say, your boiler will hold about 10 litres. Once you've done that, you are good to go. Now when you're closing it, just turn the diamond back to its original position, and on the blue tab on the inside, or the side of the little plastic, push that in, and once that's closed, you're good to go. Now the reason it's called a frost protection valve is, in essence, if it gets to a certain temperature and you haven't drained down the tank, it will drain down the tank automatically for you. So what it'll do is it'll automatically trip, it will turn that diamond for you, and it'll push and it'll force that blue tab out, and it will drain down the boiler. It's actually a really good design because it stops any water from being in the tank when it does get to very cold temperatures. Now what you've got to bear in mind is, if you've not used the vehicle in a while, especially if it's during the winter, if you've stored it, what might happen is when you come to use it in the summer, it may not allow you to seal that. So you'll go to turn the diamond and push that blue tab in, and that blue tab will keep pinging out. The reason for that is that reacts to temperature. If that's the case, what you'll need to do is you're going to need to turn your heating on for your for the actual vehicle heating, not your water heating, your actual vehicle heating, and heat this area for about 30 minutes. And what that will do is it'll heat that solution up, so it'll allow you to close the boiler. And that tends to happen in the colder months, and especially when you've not used the van. Obviously when you're using it, it's not a problem, because this will be all nice and up to temperature, because you'll have your water in there which will be heating, and obviously your temperature for your heating on the inside as well. But it's just something to bear in mind. Now I've just put my torch on there so you can see it's that little bung there, just there with the little diamond on the top. There's a black nib up on the top of it, and you can see that little blue tab which just jutting out on the side there. To close that, all you need to do, because it's open at the moment, is just put your hand in, all you need to do is then turn it so the diamond's in that position with the black nib in, and the blue tab is flush on the outside, so it's not jutting out anymore. Now as I say, because it is in quite a difficult position, I will of course show you that on handover should you want me to. So moving on from your lounge, going into your bathroom area, there was one area that I forgot to actually tell you about, just located underneath your oven, just here. You can see that you've got your frost protection valves, your isolation valves rather, which are just located here. That's what these red switches are. They isolate specific points in the vehicle. You should never need to turn them, they should always stay in this position. If you turn them, it will stop, obviously, say for example that particular one, it'll stop the fridge from working. You should only need to turn them if we tell you to. They're really there for when we're working on the vehicle. Your breaker point is just down here, so the vehicle ever trips. Your trip box is just located below that, so you can open that up, and obviously if the vehicle ever trips, you know where to come to. And we're now in the bathroom area. So we've discussed obviously about priming your system for your hot water and on your shower and your taps. You've got a bit of storage as well in here, but the main thing that we need to discuss is your toilet. So the blade on the toilet that I mentioned on the outside is this bit of plastic here. Slide that across or away from you to open it, slide it towards you to close it. So when in use, you need to open that up so all the waste can drop into the cassette. Once you've done that, click that blue button which will activate the flush, and that will empty the tank and flush it into the cassette. Once that's happened, pull that blade back towards you to close the cassette. You close it for two reasons. The main reason being is it stops any odours and smells from escaping. But the second reason is it does stop you, or get you into the habit at least, of having that blade closed. So when you come to remove the cassette and empty it, it's closed and you're good to go. On the top here, your blue button, as I mentioned, will activate your flush. You do need your pump on for that to operate. And you'll notice there's like a little tab here. At the moment it's green, so it's empty. But when that turns to red, it's an indicator that you need to empty the cassette. And that concludes the handover video on this Rollerteam T-line 590. I hope you enjoyed.